what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here, and I'm back again for another video. And if you've been watching my channel lately, you know I've been streaming a lot of the Elder Scrolls Skyrim on VR, and so I thought it was time to talk about PlayStation VR. Now, if you watched my last pickups video, you know I got the PS4, and this was one of the reasons why I wanted the PS4. I wanted to check out virtual reality. And one of the things I like in certain titles is it's all about immersion for me. And so I thought VR was the next step. I heard that PlayStation had done it pretty well, and all initial reports suggest that, I agree. I think Skyrim is a blast in VR. But once I got to thinking about Skyrim, I got to thinking, this is an excellent game, but Skyrim, originally it was a 7th generation title. It came out on the PS3 and Xbox 360 and the PC, of course. And so that kind of got me thinking, well, what are some of the older generation games, maybe 6th or 7th generation games, that could use a VR upgrade? Well, I've got a few titles in mind, so if you'll stay tuned, we'll take a look. Okay, so starting off, and I broke these up into a few different genres of game, and starting off with some good old action-adventure, I thought the first game we should take a look at is Resident Evil 5 Gold. Now, the Gold Edition came out exclusively, I believe, on the PS3, and it had the, the Separate Ways, I believe, was the standalone campaign. They brought back mercenaries from Resident Evil 4 and a bunch of different costumes and the like. One of the interesting things about the PlayStation 3 version is that it supported the PlayStation Move. Of course, the Move are the two primary controllers besides the DualShock 4. You have the DualShock 4 and the Move controllers primarily used with the VR. So I thought that was really cool that they kind of brought that technology back. And like I said, this game was excellent. It played a lot like the Wii version of Resident Evil 4 with the way you point it with the reticle and move with the nav controller, and then you use the Move controller. Awesome game. A lot of people thought this is where the series started to decline, but I thought that besides the AI, I thought Resident Evil 5 was definitely on par with Resident Evil 4. Of course, I like Leon better as a character than Chris. But like I said, just the slightest of edges goes to Resident Evil 4. But this one added awesome graphics, not that the last one didn't, but this was on the new generation at the time. A bunch of new guns, a little more action as far as the combat and things like that goes. And so this is definitely one of my favorite in the series. So imagine this, with the PlayStation VR. I think this would be scary as well as action-packed. So Resident Evil 5. Okay, and going on here to a couple of games. Now, of course, I talked about the PlayStation Move earlier, and so we have to talk about Sport Champions 1 and 2 on the PlayStation Move. Now, Sport Champions 1, it released with the PlayStation Move, and I thought for the time I was blown away by it. My brother Aaron of Killer Concepts, he bought me the Move system for Christmas one year. Yeah, it was a Christmas for my birthday one year, and like I said, I was immediately blown away. Gladiator Battle on this was my favorite, and playing that in VR would be awesome because playing on the Move is stellar. And of course, archery, they're more or less it's more or less like a tech demo, very casual tech demo, kind of like Wii Sports was, exactly like Wii Sports was, just to show off, the system, kind of like VR Worlds is doing for the VR. But man, I think these games would be a lot of fun. Of course, Sport Champions 2, they added new games like archery they brought back. They traded in Gladiator Battle, sadly, for boxing, but boxing is awesome on Sport Champions 2. Boxing works well. Of course, they threw in bowling, which was sorely missing from Sport Champions 1, considering that Wii Bowling was so popular on Wii Sports. And so I think both of these titles would be excellent. Tennis is another fun game. to play on Sport Champions 2. And so, yeah, those are my sports titles. Moving right along here. So racing games. Then they released the latest Gran Turismo. It's Gran Turismo Sport, I believe. And so you can play it in regular or in VR mode, which is cool. I'll definitely have to check that out because I'd love to play a racing game in VR. One of the games I would love, if I had to choose a racing game, the one racing game that I can play in VR, it will most definitely be Blur on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Now, Blur, they were made by, I'm looking here, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It was Bizarre Creations. Bizarre Creations, they made another title that I like called 007 Bloodstone. But this is just an action-packed arcade racing. You get power-ups similar to like you would see in Mario Kart and Wipeout, but this would be cool to experience in VR just for the visuals alone. It has a really cool futuristic neon look to it. The graphics are nice and shiny, and the colors are bright and vibrant, and so this would be sensory overload. And before you threw up, this would be one of the funnest racing games you would play. Of course, you would then puke your guts out all over the floor or wherever you were standing at the time, but it would be totally worth it. So that is Blur. And switching genres again, so you play Skyrim VR, in first-person view. Doom just came out on the VR. I just picked that up today, actually. Have not got a chance to play it and check it out. But first-person shooters are a genre that would lend themselves greatly to the VR. Of course, we've got, like I said, the aforementioned Doom VR. They've also released games like Farpoint. And so I also picked that game up and looking forward to checking that out as well. But a last gen title that I think would be perfect for the Move, or for the VR rather, is, I've got the Killzone trilogy here, but of course, either one of them would work, any of them would work, but I'm talking in particular Killzone 3, and Killzone 3 was phenomenal, and of course this supported the Move on the PlayStation 3, and playing Killzone with the Move is something to behold, and if you've got a hold of a 3D TV and you rock the 3D glasses with the headsets, it's pretty immersive on its own. I would imagine it's probably very similar to something they would do in VR, but like I said, the technology already exists. So this is a game that, like Sports Champions, could easily be, upgraded for VR support. And so, the storylines in this is excellent. The series was originally pegged as a Halo killer, and though it never quite got to that type of status, all three Killzone games are excellent. Like I said, all of them really could be upgraded in VR, but if I had to pick, I would definitely pick part 3. So, Killzone. And taking it back, and the oldest game in this list, sticking with first-person shooters, this is Breakdown on the original Xbox. Now, this is an Xbox exclusive game that was done by Namco, and in this, there's a story you play as, it's a story about, playing as a super soldier, taking on, super-powered enemies, and this game is really cool because one of the things that they tried to do and make it more unique was to make the game completely first-person view, and it was little touches, outside of just changing the perspective of the first-person view. For instance, if you dropped ammo or found ammo on the ground, you would have to physically make your character look at it and then hit the action button, and you would see his hand reach out and pick it up. And it's details like that. I think this is, in particular, as a first-person shooter that would lend itself well to VR, as far as, the perspectives and some of the animations. It's really all there. They would just have to add the panoramic, VR, view to it. But this would be a phenomenal. This is an excellent game on its own. But in VR, I think it would definitely be over the top. All right. And getting down to the wire here, the last few games. So, like I said, I've been playing a lot of Skyrim VR. That, of course, is an action RPG of epic proportions. But what about some other open world action titles, of which there are many, but two that I wanted to take a look at is, first of all, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And this is probably the greatest game you can find on the Wii U and the Switch still, in my opinion. You know, I think the Switch, you know, they kind of need to get their roster up and their library up. So, you know, besides Mario Odyssey, of course, but I still think that this is probably one of the greatest games on the system. And I mean, they just raised the bar. You know, the art style, the visual style is amazing. This is a game that I play now, and I'm constantly just, you know, panning the camera, just looking at the visuals, and that would be something that I would be doing all the time in VR, quite frankly. You know, the combat is awesome. The combat is very similar to Skyrim, and so I think, you know, slapping a first-person view on it, this is another game that I think would convert and that I think would lend itself well to VR support. So, you know, Zelda in VR, sign me up. So, and last but not least, the final game I wanted to look at, and sticking with the open world genre, is the king of open world itself, and that is the Grand Theft Auto series, and in particular Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, Grand Theft Auto 5, especially on current gen systems, of course it started on 7th gen hardware as well, but the 8th generation iterations, I mean, the graphics, you know, they were somehow able to improve the graphics from what they looked like, in particular on the PlayStation 3. It's very sharp looking on the PS3, but on the Xbox One and PS4, this game is incredible. And not to mention, I mentioned this game because they added a full-on first-person view mode. And so again, you know, for me, that seemed, I don't know a lot about the technology of VR, but that seems kind of like the first step for me. And I mean, same thing like you would see in Breakdown and Killzone, like the animations are really detailed as far as, like, you know, the way it looks when you hop into a car, or, you know, driving, or you know, even just beating someone up or shooting someone. I mean, the animations are very detailed and very fluid, and this is a game that would look awesome in VR. Again, I would, you know, just go up to the hills and the mountains, or, you know, get atop Mount Chiliad and just, you know, pan around and just kind of look in awe. Or could you imagine jumping out of a plane in VR in this? Like, are you kidding me? So that is the final game on my list. But like I said, that's going to do it for me on this video. I mean, just, you know, what do you guys think about VR? Now, have you tried it yet? I would suggest, I mean, if you haven't tried it yet, definitely, you know, try some form of VR. I would suggest going for the high-end ones. I've played, or, you know, toyed with a lot of the budget ones, and, you know, the experience just really wasn't a big deal for me. It was more of a novelty. But PlayStation VR in particular, I mean, they are looking to make full-on games in VR. I mean, fleshed out, detailed games in VR. And so I know what is it, the Vi and some of the other guys, they're doing the same thing. Hey, by the way, PlayStation, where is my Fallout 4 in VR? You know, I need that, so I would gladly buy that game for a third time. So like I said, that's gonna do it for me, and let's get to some final thoughts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that's going to do it for this episode. But I want you to leave down in the comments, what are some other titles that I may have missed? Some other titles that, now that you've got to thinking about VR, could use a VR upgrade. Leave them down in the comments and we'll discuss it below. As always, I'm Lightsaber Samurai. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing. And as always, take care. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's time to jack back in. See you guys.